I'm recording my homily for the 27th Sunday in Ordinary Time in 2018. And I'm just going to go off of a couple themes that have been continuing through the gospel as well as through my homily. So, to the last couple gospels, Jesus seems to be bringing in children into the gospel. And in very subtle ways, he keeps reminding the people that they must have faith like a child, right? So we hear that in the gospel this weekend, that they must protect the faith of the children, that they must protect children, that they must, that those who care for the children or those who are young in the faith are doing the right thing. So you have a certain theme going through here, right? And so I'm going to continue with that. The other thing is, last week I talked about Christian discipline, right? Now, Christian discipline's a little bit different than sports discipline, because sports discipline, or just that kind of egocentrical discipline, is I'm going to become the best. I'm in competition with someone. Even if it's just in competition with myself, there's someone I'm in competition with, right? Whereas Christian discipline, very different, not rooted in that pride, but rooted in love. And so it's completely other-centered. And so in some sense, it's always open to and needing to be able to use the weaknesses that are there and God's strength. God's strength, right? So that's the strength. So that discipline is using God's strength. Okay. Now, but if you look at the Olympics, if you watch the Olympics and you see these athletes come on the national scene or the international scene once every 2 years, once every 4 years, right? But they've been working hard that whole time. They've been practicing every single day and coming in really early to practice and watching their diet and getting enough sleep, and everything is focused on that, right? But you know what they also have? They also have trainers. They have a trainer, they have a mentor, they have a coach, they have someone who's going to help them become more disciplined. And I would bet that a large percentage of what the coach does is just maintain that discipline, the discipline of the routine, of the practicing, of getting better, right? And so I think there's something there for us in that. And what I'm going to talk about today is not necessarily discipline, but it's in the need for a trainer, for a coach, for a teacher, a mentor, right? Someone who helps us become better in the faith, okay? And so that's kind of where I'm going with some of this. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about with regards to that. So what we're going to talk about today is teaching. Is learning the faith, is teaching the faith, is Christian teaching. Now, I don't know what's the right word to describe that. If we had Christian discipline, this is Christian learning or Christian teaching, but it's that growth that happens as a disciple. Okay, now remember the word disciple. The word disciple means student, okay? And all of us are students, all of us are disciples. And so anytime we have that temptation to think, well, I'm an adult, I'm confirmed, I've done my initiation, I'm kind of set, I'm just in cruise control as a Catholic, then we already know we're losing our faith if we're in cruise control. Because we're students. We always need to be learning. You have on your nightstand some spiritual book. You have on your kitchen table perhaps even a spiritual book. You have things that you're just constantly using to grow in your faith. Because if we're not growing, then it's like the athlete saying, I don't need a trainer. I don't need to be exercising. I don't need to be stretching. I don't need to be eating right. And that's not the case, right? Okay, now I want to talk about a couple of the attributes of Christian learning and what's necessary. So for us as adults, it's how to keep learning, but also how to be teaching. Okay, so just that process, all right? Now, the first time in my life I was ever asked the question, do you love Jesus? The first time I was ever asked that question personally, do you love Jesus, was when I was 25 years old. I can tell you exactly where it happened. I could probably, even if I were to go back there, I could probably show you the exact table that it happened at. It was in the seminary. It was in our lunchroom. And we were sitting down for lunch. And one of our teachers, one of our professors was sitting with us. And he just turned and asked, he just said, "Do you love Jesus?" Now, I went to Catholic school, and growing up, I was always very involved in the faith. And in the Catholic school, they always told us that Jesus loved us. Jesus loves us. And we would cut out our little hearts and everything, But nobody ever asked me if I loved him. I guess we just assume it, but that's a horrible assumption because it's like a family that never says they love each other, right? But this question is even more than that. It's not like just, "Hey, I love you." This is what are the qualities that a person has, so you know they're in love, right? Because you can tell when a person's in love. You can just tell, right? They just radiate it. They want to talk about it. They want to dream about it. They constantly want to be in communication with the person they love. I mean, you just feel it when somebody's in love. And so when somebody asks you, say, "Am I in love? Do I have those qualities? Do I love talking about Jesus? Do I love learning about Jesus? Do I love being close to Jesus? Do I love sharing with other people, my relationship with Jesus? Do I love him?" I was 25 years old before I ever had somebody really ask me that question. Now, that's not a good thing, okay? So I'm sharing that with you as we're getting into this understanding of Christian learning. What is the foundation here? What is our goal? When you're talking to your kids, what is your goal with them, right? Okay. Another little fact in my life, I can only remember only one time in my life, one of my teachers said to the class, "I love you." Only one time. And the circumstances that brought it about were rather significant because it was one of our coaches who was one of the most manliest of macho men kind of guys, He was our coach, and yet he said it, but he said it was on the day he was leaving, right? So he got another job. He was leaving in the middle of the school year, and he said to us as a class of kids, he said, "I love you guys." Now, the thing is, we knew he meant it because we had seen it in his actions, we had seen it in his words. He really did care about us. He would challenge us sometimes, he would console us sometimes, but he would help us grow, he'd help us become better, and we knew that was his goal. But that was the only time. Now, isn't there something wrong with that? Now, I know people are saying, "Well, that's crossing boundaries. Teachers shouldn't say stuff like that. They shouldn't say, I love you. It might be misunderstood." But I'm talking about to the whole class. There's nothing inappropriate about that. In fact, I think there's something very wrong if you don't have that, especially in a Catholic school environment or especially in a faith environment. If you don't have that, if you don't have relationships building, I think something's wrong, and I think especially necessary and important for kids. I think Jesus alludes to that, right? He says, let the children come to me. Let the children come to me. The disciples were trying to prevent them, and he says, "No, let the children come to me." And that happens through relationships, right? Now, when I was growing up, I can't really remember either ever a time when my teachers were at Mass. Now, maybe it was the Mass we went to. Maybe they went to a different parish. Maybe they were just so anxious to get away from us as kids that they would go to a different parish. I don't know. But I wouldn't see them at Mass. And as a kid, I didn't really think about it. But there was a fracture there. There was a discrepancy between, religion class, because that's all it was just religion class. And I think what it should have been was this familial desire to love Jesus. Because my religion class was never that. It was never about loving Jesus. It was about getting an A on a test or whatever, learning some book stuff. Never about learning about Jesus, or never loving Jesus. Okay, so in saying these things, what are some qualities that truly are necessary for the sake of Christian learning? Number one, the teacher must love the subject matter. What is the subject matter here? What have we been talking about? The subject matter is Jesus Christ, right? The subject matter is not theology per se. Theology is part of it. Theology is a component of it. But it's coming to love Jesus. And so the master, the teacher, must already know that. The teacher must already be in love with Jesus. And it must be apparent, because, well, love is apparent. And so it will be apparent, and therefore the children or the students, or if they're adults or children, the students will immediately be drawn into that. They'll be witnesses of it. Right? The word martyr is just a witness. So they'll be witnesses of that love. I often wonder if the reason that I'm so weak in some areas of my life, I'm so weak in growing in discipline and growing and becoming the person that I want to become in terms of my relationship with Jesus, that I often wonder that if I just had a good teacher, maybe that would happen faster. Maybe it would happen faster. I don't know. Anyways, so you have that component of learning, Christian learning, which is very necessary. And so the master, the teacher, must know the subject matter well, which in this case is must be in love with Jesus. And I can expand that out and be in love with Jesus, be in love with the Catholic Church, and be in love with the Church's teachings. And then the last part of it, the teacher must love the kids. The teacher must love the students. There must be love there. It can't be one stranger teaching another stranger. I mean, yes, there's sometimes that happens, but more likely we need to have some relationship. Now, if you use spiritual books, at some point you're going to want to know the author, right? If you're reading a spiritual book, at some point you're going to want to know whether or not this person is truly manifesting it in their own life, because you want to learn from their example. And so if I'm reading St. John of the Cross, well, I'm going to want to learn about St. John of the Cross. I'm going to want to know him. I'm going to want to know him on a more personal level, right? So that I can see that in their actions and their words. All right, those are two very, very basic things. The teacher must be, in the Christian context, the teacher must be in love with Jesus Christ. If you have a teacher who's not in love with Jesus Christ, run, okay? The second thing is the teacher must love the student, because then they build a bond, they build a bridge, okay? All right, now, one of the reasons I bring this up, a practical thing, here at St. Mary's, we are beginning a new faith formation program. This is a faith formation program that we had created when I was in another parish. We are now implementing it here. We're making some modifications to it, but we're beginning the process of implementing it. And it is a program in which the parents are the ones who teach their own children, okay? So the kids are not going to come to catechism class per se here at the parish, but the parents are going to teach their own children. We provide the program, we provide the context for it, and then we make sure that it's happening. So we also provide some of the discipline. We provide the support, the encouragement. We are flexible enough to make sure that everyone is being able to fit into the program. So we do those things, right? But the program is mom and dad teaching their children. Now, what is the benefit of that? Well, let's think about some of the things we just said. Should every parent be in love with Jesus Christ? Well, yeah, right? Every Catholic, okay? Every Christian. They should be in love with Jesus Christ. Now, who loves these children most of all? Who's closest to a particular child? Well, it's mom and dad. And so the Christian learning that needs to occur, first and foremost, needs to come from the one who loves those children the most. Now, do their teachers love them? Yes, but not quite the same as mom and dad. Does the pastor love them? Yes, but not quite the same as mom and dad. And so you have this relationship between mom and dad and the child becoming a Christian teaching relationship, which is based on love of Jesus Christ, which is being taught through that love. That's the connection, that's the bond, right? Okay. Now, the reality is, a lot of our parents are very insecure in that role because they've been trained to think that it's all about theology or it's all academic, and so they feel unqualified. It's like, what if my child asks me to define the Trinity? I'll just explode. I don't know what to say, right? No. So the program helps them to keep it in the proper context, right? Faith is not complicated. Faith is not complicated. The ability of one to surrender to God in love is not complicated. But it's not to say that it's easy either. There needs to be a bond forged, right? It needs to be created. Okay, so we're placing it in the context of the most loving relationship that exists. Now, this ties in with the first reading today, which is the creation of Adam and Eve and the creation of the very first marriage, right? Adam and Eve being created, the two become one. And then Jesus uses that in the gospel today to describe the bond of marriage that must not be broken, that must be protected and nurtured and kept alive and well. It is the most important loving bond here on earth. And then in the second half of the gospel, he describes why that is, because he talks about the children. It is the child who is the fruit of that bond and needs that bond and love, right? Okay. All right. So I will see you next week. I hope you have a wonderful week and God bless you.